Let's go ahead and get started. Jamie, would you start us off?
Can you see it?
I think it's still loading. We're good.
Yeah? Okay. Thank you so much, Sai, and StopWaste. And I really appreciate the invitation. I think this is such an esteemed panel, and I'm really honored to be a part of it. My name is Jamie Fasciola, and I'm the founder of Furniturecycle. And I've spent the last several years working at the bottom of the supply chain in the repair and reuse space. I've been a consultant, an advisor, a business owner, an employee at 2 different upholstery shops, including one of the largest ones on the West Coast, which is in East Oakland. It's called K. Chesterfield. And I'm also on the board of the National Upholstery Association. My background is in environmental science, corporate environmental management, and social entrepreneurship. Today, we're going to talk very quickly about furniture waste as a catalyst for change. A quick intro to Furniturecycle. It's a solutions lab dedicated to exploring furniture waste from the bottom up. Again, this downstream view. It launched less than a year ago. One of the catalysts for Furniturecycle was a passion project, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute, but it's been deeply informed by my professional and personal experience. I'm a 3rd-generation East Bay resident. My grandpa was part of the wave and landed in Jingletown in Oakland during the Great Depression. And though he never finished high school, he was able to support his family of 4 sons working as an upholsterer out of his garage in San Leandro for over 50 years. And so though Furniturecycle is a nod to a product's life cycle, it also references the generational cycle as a reminder that there's humans behind all of these materials. I don't think furniture waste is very well kind of understood just yet in the larger scheme of things. And I know there's a lot of attention on fashion and textiles, but I just want to highlight some quick data points to just kind of map the furniture landscape just a tiny bit. Furniture imports to the US have increased 5 times since the 1970s. And the reason that's important, it creates a lot of downward price pressure for domestic manufacturers to compete with the cost of labor abroad. So it often ends up creating a lot of substitute low quality materials to compete on price. Employment in manufacturing has dropped to less than 10% of the workforce. Our spending on stuff has skyrocketed 20 times in the last 50 years. Furniture waste has also exploded by 600%. We generate over 24 billion pounds of furniture waste, over 80% of which is landfilled. Consumer expectations for furniture longevity is falling. It's dropped by half in 20 years. Bulky waste it's not often talked about. I think in the future we will hear more about it, but I found this fascinating study from the UK where bulky waste makes up 42% of their bulky waste pickups, a third of all of the bulky waste pickups is reusable as is, and that number increases to over 50% with slight repair. And random, sad, fast fact is that there's actually more employees at Waste Management than there are upholsterers in the United States of America. So what we're seeing, of course, is this increase in spending, waste is up, product longevity is down, manufacturing jobs are down, and I think it's adding to this disconnect between our materials, labor, skills, our environment, and our stuff. Right, so as I had mentioned, one of the catalysts cycle was a project, and it didn't start as a passion project, but it became one. And in January 2019, I started cataloging discarded furniture in my North Oakland neighborhood. It was so simple. I'm a commuter, I'm a bike commuter, and I walk my dog every day. And so I'm on the streets a lot. And if I would see a piece, I would just take a picture and keep going. I'd post it on Instagram, on my personal account. I had very few followers. It was all very low stakes. And it was really just a creative outlet during a time of transition. But I learned that you actually learn a lot being a committed observer. And I realized that we're so conditioned to seeing it that I think we're actually really quite blind to it. In my neighborhood, I think the practice stems from the original sharing economy. It reminds me a lot of wish cycling, and I don't know how many people are familiar with that term, but that's the idea that you hope and want that plastic thing that you're eating out of or drinking out of to be recyclable, so you put it in the recycling bin Come to find out it's not actually recyclable and you've tainted the whole bin and they've got to throw it away. And I think people put it on the curb with the best of intentions to help it find its second home. But what ends up often happening is that street furniture is perishable and it degrades really quickly when it's left on the street. You'll notice this has no cushions and no drawers and has been tagged. And this happens really quickly. I could see things within hours of each other in a completely different shape than when I would have just seen it. I also think that this project was an excellent reflection of our values and priorities. And since we can order anything we want around the world and it'll get here in hours or just days, but we've created no simple system to recapture, reclaim, reuse, refurbish, or repair all of this furniture that is just at our doorsteps. For me, one of the most haunting discoveries was how furniture truly just exists in two states in our kind of collective consciousness. It is either new shining marketing fodder on blogs or in design magazines, or you read about in the newspaper as blight and illegal dumping. And I think that this harmful reductive narrative has really limited our understanding for us to be able to make use of what is right in front of us. And so what do you do when you blind spots and this reductive narrative and everything on the trash curb must be trash and you can't really see it anyways because it's, if anyone lives in Oakland, I'm imagining maybe this might be kind of, those might be really familiar pictures for you. But what you miss is that within 2 miles of my home, in just over a year, I passed by 50,000 pounds of furniture. And that's just one neighborhood in a city that has over 50 different neighborhoods. You know, you start scaling that up and those numbers grow really quickly. So then, of course, furniture waste is always thought of as this monolithic blob, right? Just like furniture, but no, it's more than that. And so I took the time to break it down. And what I discovered is that the majority was seating, couches and chairs. Second was storage, that's bookshelves and dressers, followed by tables, end tables, coffee tables, dining tables, etc. Furthermore, I know that it's so common to talk about waste in terms of pounds, but I don't really know who that's useful to. So I graded every single piece. There's nearly 600 pieces, but I really wanted to know. And so I put them into one of 5 buckets: like new, imperfect yet functional, incomplete, needs work, not usable as furniture, or unclear, unknown. And that would be if it was like buried under something else. And it, you know, as you can see, these top 3 categories add up to 90%, nearly 90%. That is reusable. And so, you know, this is not a reupholstery problem because the stuff doesn't have owners anymore. They don't want it. This is not a donation problem because it needs to be sellable. It needs to be in sellable condition in order to donate it. And what this discovery is really, we have this huge gap of imperfectly perfect stuff with nowhere to go because it's missing a cushion or a drawer. And so I find this to be really quite the paradox, because right now, for the interior design industry, for example, they're really suffering these enormous wait times, up to like 30 weeks for this new furniture that they're waiting to get over on boats because the shipping is so messed up with the pandemic. But meanwhile, we're throwing away hundreds of thousands of pounds of furniture every day in our own backyard. And that's, of course, because we've invested in systems of consumption and disposal instead of systems of localized systems of reuse and renewal. I mean, imagine how much easier our jobs would be to, like, you know, get to our kind of waste climate equity goals if furniture was banned from the landfill. I mean, I think we could instantly imagine infrastructure and we'd find the funding ways to help reimagine what we're doing with all of this stuff. In my small research, I am not seeing this as a waste problem the way that we're typically taught to think about waste problems. I see it as a lack of investment, imagination, and infrastructure. And lastly, I mean, my favorite discovery as a downstream focused person in a circular economy, right? The downstream is the new upstream. And so this downstream is in our front yards, right? Furniture waste is a decentralized problem that requires a decentralized solution. It needs to be a community-based approach. We need to invite in the skills and voices of our existing frontline skilled laborers, our creatives, our artists, our reuse professionals. I mean, these ecosystems already exist. They're fragile, but they're still there. And so I really see this as a call to action to be inclusive and collaborative going forward. I didn't watch the time, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamie. All right, let's go ahead and let's jump right into sorry, y'all. Heather, would you go next?
Sorry, I was muted. Can you see my slides yet? Okay. Let's see. Okay. I just realized I actually have to flip back through them because I accidentally started at the end. So I'll start at the beginning and I'll introduce myself. Thank you so much, Sai and StopWaste, for inviting me to be part of this panel and for giving me the opportunity to take some time to think with you all about the source of our fiber. I'm kind of looking now from a little bit of the opposite angle from Jamie. My name is Heather Podall. I work for Fibershed. We're a nonprofit organization based here in Northern California. And before I tell you briefly a little bit about what Fibershed does, I want to invite you to look down at what you're wearing and ask yourself whether you can identify in your clothing right now what fibers are on your body. Can you imagine where those fibers came from? Are they natural fibers like cotton or wool or linen? Are they synthetic fibers, polyester or nylon? Do you have could you conjure up a picture in your mind of where these clothes started their life on a farm or a ranch or a fossil fuel extraction and processing supply chain? Can you kind of imagine that those clothes you're wearing actually came from somewhere in the ground or on the land and took a journey probably across the world in the process of being washed, spun, woven, or knit and made into garments for you? We don't often think about our clothes as being connected to a landscape or a set of natural resources. And so that's one of the main reasons that Fibershed was formed, to help us reestablish some connections with where our clothes come from and understand that we can make choices. Increasingly, we can explore what our options are for having better and closer relationships where those come from. So our approach at Fibershed is to look at textile systems with a soil to soil lens and to understand as much as we can, where are these textiles in our lives coming from their very source, whether it's from a landscape where they're growing on a farm or ranch, or are they actually coming from a fossil fuel system, which is where all of our synthetic textiles are coming from a plastic supply chain. So we're focused on a natural fiber perspective, and we're focused on a regional perspective. So our vision at Fibershed is to understand what are the options here in our region, and specifically Northern California is the home Fibershed that we're based in. We have about 40 affiliate communities around the United States and in many other countries that are doing similar projects applicable to their own regions. But here in Northern California, these are some images of some of the processors, producers, manufacturers of fiber that are in our community. Kind of moving across the screen, you can see a cotton field that's actually planted in a cover crop. You can see a ranch where wool is being produced. You can see a sheep shearer who's taking that wool and preparing it to be processed. You can see some hand spinning and hand knitting. And then you can see on the right side, kind of moving up a step in having some industrial capacity for spinning, and you can see weaving on the bottom. We have natural dyeing in the middle. So these are representative of the community of people that we work with at Fibershed. We have a membership in our producer program of about 180 fiber producers, processors, manufacturers, who are a little more than half of those are actually farmers and ranchers on the land. And we're working with them to support their work to enable more development of regional economic opportunities within this community. And also we spend a lot of our attention looking at what are the impacts on the landscape that our community in the fiber tech, the textile industry here in our community can have. So when we started our organization, we really began with a focus on soil. That's like I showed you, that's our kind of core value, is what's coming from the soil and what's going to the soil. So we work with the farmers and ranchers in our community to understand what their soil status is, what's the organic carbon content, what's the health of their soil, and we do a lot of modeling of what's possible. So this is a photo from a sheep ranching landscape in our producer community. They're taking soil samples, and based on the results we got on just the first 10,000 acres of our producer network that looked at this, we saw that by increasing the soil organic carbon by 1%, which is completely achievable with practices we know how to do in farming systems that we're working in, compost application, silvopasture, planting trees in pastures, hedgerows, growing cover crops when crops are involved. If we could increase the soil organic carbon across that landscape by just 1%, we could offset the emissions of almost 120,000 cars. We could hold 284 million more gallons of water in that soil. So the impact that our fiber producing landscapes can have more broadly on our global climate, on our regional ecosystems is really robust and impressive. Another focus we have, as I said, is on regional economic systems and economic development within that community of producers. So how can we create more opportunities for the clothes we're wearing to have a shorter cycle between where they're grown and how they come to us? What is the capacity we have right now? So we do a lot of mapping at Fibershed. We do a lot of assessment of the wool and cotton production here in our state. We're really an important state for producing both of those commodities. We're one of the largest wool producers in the country. We produce about 3 million pounds of wool every year here in California, but only very much less than 1% of that is actually processed in our state. The rest of it is all exported overseas, or a smaller portion of that is processed on the East Coast. But a large portion of that just goes straight out of our state and even out of our country for all the value addition that goes into producing goods with that wool. And a lot of the value of the wool we produce is just really never realized because we don't have the infrastructure to process it and turn it into goods we can use. So this is a mapping diagram from one of our programs last year that looked at assessing what are the capacities at various levels, industrial and artisanal levels of processing. What are the gaps in what we have in the Western region for processing, and how can we start to fill those? So those are things we work on at Fibershed, and what we're working towards is making clothes able to be available to the greater population coming through processing that's local. So these are a few images of some of the textile products that are coming out of, to some degrees, there's a lot of prototyping still happening in our region. As you saw on the slide before, there's a lot of gaps in these systems and in the processing. But quickly, you can see some examples of garments that were on display at a fashion show we had recently. These are all fibers. In the top middle, there's a student, there was a student at a local design school, Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, who started her own clothing company. And the top you see there is a climate beneficial wool, zero waste top from Italia, a collection. And the Fibershed Marketplace is actually not part of our organization directly. It's a for-profit cooperative business that was started by a group of producers from our community to market their products within this idea of a Fibershed, of a defined region. And the North Face is an example of a company who is at a mass production scale, not necessarily processing locally, but this hat was made through a domestic supply chain, and it is sourcing transparently processed climate beneficial wool from one of the ranches doing carbon farming in our programs. We have on our website a clothing guide that you can access at this bit.ly, I can put this in the chat too, address that goes through just some of the suggestions for wearers in general. You know, what are the best choices we can do with the options we have? And what are the ways that we can understand our impact beyond just what we buy, but how we're caring for clothes and what we're doing with them after we're done using them. We also have a survey. I'll put this in the chat as well. We would love to hear from anyone in this meeting about what's in your wardrobe. We're doing a survey and trying to get as many Californians to participate as possible to help inform our advocacy work, so we can shift the systems that have been leading us down a path where we have a lot of pollution, a lot of waste, a lot of energy use in production of clothing. We can shift that by understanding where we're at now and how we can move that forward.
Thank you, Heather. Connie, would you want to take the lead here?
Yes, indeed. Okay, is my screen up there? Terrific. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm so fascinated. Thank you, Cy and StopWaste. It's, oh, you can see all your faces here, can't you? Should I, no?
No, you can't. You
Okay.
can. You don't want to see that.
Just,
Yeah.
okay. Okay. It's so important for us, so critical for us to understand textiles and clothing. And so, like Heather was just explaining, if we all could get the information and understand, and I come from education, so I'm still an educator. I'm Emeritus faculty from San Francisco State. My research has been in the importance and the value of clothing for people. And the terms that Jamie said about imperfectly perfect stuff, that's something we need to integrate into our wardrobe, into our way of thinking. And so what I would like to begin with here is ask a question about what makes clothing and textile products so special. We hear that they're special. We hear that there's a value. We hear about sales. And I'm asking you, is this because there's 150 million apparel items manufactured annually? And that's enough for 20 items per person? Is that why they're special? Because we make so many of them? Or is it because more stores have these, we will recycle your clothing for you? And I'm giving you two definitions that to me are critical to understand the difference of from where we are right now. When we talk about recycling, we're breaking down materials. We're breaking down the materials to make new products from them, but we're breaking them down to their original form. So you're recycling, you're breaking them down. And if you look at these red, orange, whatever color pants and these tan pants in the window, if you were to bring them back, why do they have to be recycled? Could they be used again? Could the store be selling them again? Or could you be selling them again? So that's the recycle. And I would say what we really need to be considering is the concept of reuse. Using an item, just as some of us explained on what we were wearing or what was our favorite textile product, in a different purpose, or as Jamie was saying with the furniture, to think about a different way that we could use it. That's what makes our clothing and textiles so special to us. And to give a few specific examples to me, then it is, and my research has showed, it's the intrinsic value of the hands in the supply chain. Yes, the people that grow and work with the sheep, the people that grow the cotton, the people that are spinning the yarn, the people that are weaving it, the people dyeing it, the people cleaning it, the people all over the globe that we don't often think about. But what we do think about is the memories that we have from that clothing. And that's valuable. And that's what's so special. And that's where I'm an advocate at this point in my career for all of us to understand what we value and how to keep it in our own supply chain for longer. So my work here says, okay, so if that is so special and I'm agreeing and my research shows that people agree with us, then why globally are 80% of discarded textiles headed for landfill or incineration? Why is that if we know we value them? And the EPA says that 12.8 million tons of clothing are sent to landfill annually. What you have right here is what is not potentially could go to landfill or not, but what this is this is some of that clothing. If we're only wearing our clothing 7 times before we get rid of it. Now, I'm not suggesting how you get rid of it, and getting rid of it could be in different formats. It could be giving it to a friend, could be throwing it in the trash. But what you're seeing here is what came out of some work that I did in the city of San Francisco, and these are bales of textiles. A bale of textiles is about a ton, that's about 2,200 pounds. I'm going to say each one of these bales, therefore, might have about 2,200 items of clothing. When I was seeing all this and seeing all these statistics, and I'm teaching textiles and clothing in, a career we're in, I said, I fortunately called upon Pier 96 and Recology in the city of San Francisco. And I said, would you be okay with students from a class of mine to come down and look through some of these bales? Because I really thought, and I knew in my heart that there'd be some good stuff there. And maybe the idea was that, what if there was a washing machine of some kind that could sort, because everything that comes into Recology in San Francisco, someone's hands touches it also to sort it. Because in the blue bin, and this is all textiles that come in the blue bin, the recycle bin, you may say to me, but Connie, textiles aren't asked for. That's cans and bottles and paper. Why all the textiles? And I will tell you, because my firm belief is people are trying to do the right thing. People believe that textiles can be recycled because it could be cotton, or it could be wool, or it could be polyester, or they don't really know. But what we did is we spent a day sorting through textiles, and I want to share with you some of our findings, which were 3 here that I'm going to share with you. One was massive contamination. And by contamination, I mean, as I said, everything is sorted, but you got a can of soup or a can of tomato sauce that sticks to the textiles. Because these are, if you think about, if anybody's seen a truck come by that's taking the recycle bin and putting it in their big truck, and then they dump it at Pier 96, but things get squished down. When things get squished down, the tomato sauce, the yogurt, the vodka, the beer, the milk, whatever it is that's still in the containers, contaminates the textiles. So we did a count, and the number 1 item that we found was denim. And so, denim of all different fiber categories, all different brands, but denim is something that's worn by 1-year-olds and 101-year-olds and complete different sizes. And so that was something that we went, is there something there? And then the last slide is saying, basically, we need a system to collect, identify, and sort. And what my message is to everybody after seeing this is, don't put it in your blue bin. Don't let it get that far. Don't let someone else collect it. You identify and you sort. So I was very fortunate to get a grant from the city of San Francisco, and we named it the Wear Movement. And it was a collection drive that happened on the San Francisco State campus. And basically the idea here that's different than others is that we were a targeted ask. And we said, okay, this month we're just going to do jackets. This month we're just going to do denim. This month we're just going to do sweaters, so that we were a pop-up store on the campus. People were donating and we were giving away. And our findings for this were twofold. One was that you didn't have to get, these are donations primarily from administrators, faculty, and staff. You don't need Students did not need to give you something that said you donated. You didn't need that for your tax purpose. That wasn't the motivator. The motivator for the people that were bringing things in was that we were a community, San Francisco State. I work there, I teach there. I'm giving my things to someone, and a student there is going to be getting them back. This was extremely powerful for the students that would put something on and go, wow. I'm going for an interview. Who gave me this jacket? Someone from this community. The second thing, which was a finding, was that the word if it was reused, recycled, that it's dirty and it's damaged, and that those words were not successful words for this target audience, so we didn't use them. What I have found through my career, and this is what I'm still doing now, is the concept of asking everybody here to look around. See what could have an extended life. So on the tablecloth that I'm holding up here is from a Hilton Hotel. The city of San Francisco used to be, we will be again, a very large hospitality location. And tablecloths, what happens when they get a stain, when it's doesn't come out? Whoop, landfill. And so here I have students that were making products out of them. We made a lot of different products out of them. Thinking outside the box, we can't still think in the same manner that we have been. And then the idea of the banner project over here, and the banners that are marketing banners, that campaigns that people have, that they are up for maybe 3 months, 6 months, and then it's a polyvinyl chloride of different denier. We through a lot of different findings and whatnot came up with bags that we were making out of these for the city, with the idea until COVID hit that these bags would be something that could be sold in the store, because again, this idea of pride and community and extending your wear. So I have a few other examples that I just wanted to hopefully motivate you with this idea of how to be restorative and regenerative with your textile products. So here I am, and this is a jacket that, again, I wanted to have a vest. It's a heavy wool jacket. I didn't always need it. So taking the sleeves and putting zippers in them so that you could remove them and that you could zip them back up. And if this is something that you don't have a skill to do, there are local tailors, local repair shops that can do that for you without much of a cost. I also new buttons, what I wanted to do was, I'm big on needing a hood sometimes. So it's a hood that can come off. It's zipped off and zipped on. So that's something that I have. Here's a gentleman called Zero Waste Daniel. He takes scraps from when you're cutting fabrics to make garments in the manufacturing world. There's lots of scraps. What he does is he takes the scraps and remanufactures them. And then Nicole McLaughlin, who is known for thinking outside the box, and I'm saying she's a rethinker. A lot of people have hats. What do you do with all those hats? Have you ever thought of remaking them into something that wasn't a hat, but that you sat on? Thinking outside the box. So my question to everybody here is, what will you do? What could you commit to at the end of this that you could restore? Or the pair of pants that's too long, make them into shorts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Joanne, would you go ahead and end us off here?
Yeah, I will do it. Can you see my screen? Great. Thank you, everyone. And it's no joke about what a great panel this is. All of us have actually worked together in some form or another. So I'm pretty excited to be here again today with everyone. So I'll be talking today. I'm from the California Product Stewardship Council. We're a small nonprofit with some big names behind us. So we have almost every city and county in California in our network. Our board has quite a few large urban and a few rural communities and jurisdictions, a couple haulers and recyclers. And so we also have a good relationship with our sponsors. So I didn't use the right screen because Fibershed has joined and I have a great slide with their logo. And of course, I was trying to hurry too fast. But Fibershed, again, one of those amazing organizations at the silver level, really engaging with CPSC. And what we do is we are advocates and educators for producer responsibility. Actually, before I go into the problems, we'll take just a moment to talk about what producer responsibility is. And that typically, we've been kind of pigeonholed into waste organizations or waste policies. But as you've heard from the other panelists, like waste is actually kind of a bad word these days. These are resources, these are materials. And so what we look at for CPSC is how to get producers engaged at this end of life so that these materials can continue on in their life cycles, whatever it may be. So today we're going to focus on textiles. So again, this list is a short list. These are the problems that are easy for us to define. These are issues that are often taken up in policy for other products. So again, as we look into how are we going to regulate, first we have to talk about why we're going to regulate a product. And ultimately what we see in the market right now is that these products have gone unregulated for decades and decades. And so what we have is an immense volume at the end, hitting, if not our landfills, it's hitting the landfills in the developing countries. And so this immense volume is made of plastics, crude oil, we're adding dyes, we're adding chemical finishes, we're weaving in batteries, and the complexities of this one product, which simply is to clothe us, but as an industry and as a waste stream, it's really complex. So what CPSC we try to do is, why would we try to get involved? Why would we want to set a policy for a certain product? And when you look at the history in California and the history of producer responsibility, it's always been really evident in those hard to manage products. So in California, we have 11 product stewardship and EPR, producer responsibility. Those are the acronym programs for carpet, mattresses, medicine. And as we go to add textiles and clothing into our programs that are managed state and locally, what are the goals and what are we trying to achieve? So ultimately, we're trying to get as many out of our landfills. But a landfill ban is just gonna be a little bit of a NIMBY move, right? Not in my backyard. So if we ban it from our landfills, it's ultimately gonna end up at someone else's landfill. We need to look at funding these management programs to identify the fabrics, to identify the best stream. It takes labor, it takes space, it takes time, and someone has to pay for it. And what we see in some of the other product programs is as soon as that value disappears, the program fails to run. And we saw that with packaging, right? It's been a problem, increasing problem over the last decade because the end markets for plastic have changed. So if we have this whole system that's linear and it's based on sending it away, throwing it away, when the truth comes out, there is no away. So the other thing we really want to do is support these regional economies, this local labor, these businesses that have been around for centuries. I mean, repair and alteration. These are the businesses that are often of marginalized communities and not as engaged as the more centralized processes. So when we create a policy, we want to create one that is equitable, that supports the labor and doesn't actually take it away. And then leveling the playing field. At the end of the day, when you look at the brands and the companies who are leading the way, it costs money to invest in climate beneficial agriculture. It costs money to rebrand, to, you know, communicate that to your customers. So at the end of the day, when you look at the brands and the products that are cheaper, they're actually cheaper because they're externalizing a lot of those costs. So by leveling the playing fields, you're actually forcing those costs into the program and kind of forcing that responsibility for the lot of the brands that have been not taking responsibility for all these years. So here's kind of a product stewardship EPR spectrum. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but this is just to show you that the programs really differ in their details. And true EPR means there's no consumer fees, meaning you're not paying anything at the point of purchase, and you're not paying anything when you drop your products off for recycling or disposal. But recycling just isn't enough. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about driving a circular economy, and to actually change the system, we can't just keep feeding materials through the same system. And one of the greatest disruptors is already there. And we've already talked about it, and that's repair. So repairing, upcycling, and using the materials that are already created and already in our economy is ultimately going to be the best way forward. So it's not always, you know, going to be so simple, especially when we talk about things at the state level and policy. So again, we want to talk about investments. People forget to actually truck something from Oakland to Southern California without traffic. You know, that's a full 8-hour day of labor. So thinking about who's going to pay for these transportation costs and this expansion of secondhand e-commerce. We see e-commerce and direct to consumer as a really big frontier, but how can policies get involved to really level the playing field, like we said, for these secondhand e-commerce companies? Oops. And then the last few that are really ultimately the most important from a policy is transparency. We see all these take back programs popping up. We see a lot of other companies and even some countries like France creating these EPR programs, but ultimately they're really just greenwashed collection programs. Unless we can see what materials are collected, where they're being sent, and hold them to improvement goals, it's really just another charity, another thrift store. So here in California, we're all about transformative changes and innovation. So we know that the program that we establish here in California is gonna really take these things on, empowering the repair businesses and leveling the playing field. So with that, I guess we're going to Q&A after this.
Yeah. So what we're going to do, thank you to all of our panelists. With the bit of time we have remaining, I want to really, I'm going to ask one question for the panelists, and then I want to move into a little bit of a Q&A, make sure that our participants have a chance to ask any questions that have come up through the discussion we've had today. So I want you all, if you could just go around. One thing that I want to ask you is, what is your vision? We've talked a little bit about the problems. Some of you have spoken to the solutions you're working towards, but what is your vision for a sustainable textile industry?
I'll go first because I have so many nice clothes that are just damaged and living in the back of my closet that live there because I know they're nice fabrics and I know their brand names, but I just don't know where to go and where to take these damaged goods. So I see a lot of these small businesses that have been around for a long time, just getting the recognition they finally deserve. So whether it's like county-run websites that have all the repair businesses, or like I know here in Sacramento, we have like a textile guild, but you know, most people just kind of maybe think it's just a group of like old grannies knitting, but ultimately it could be fun events and it can be really modern.
I'll go next. I love that answer, Joanne. I think what comes to my mind in terms of a vision kind of overlaid on what I talked about that Fibershed outlays in our work is just this idea of connection and engagement. And, personally, I'm a knitter. I love to be engaged with making things, and everyone might have a different way of doing that. Having a clothing exchange can be a way of being engaged with what you're doing with your clothes and how you're getting it. But also just if we can regionalize bit by bit some of this system, we just start to have more connection. We start to have more community. And like Joanne said, there's a celebration aspect. It's sort of turning this model of what are all the things wrong with the textile system upside down and saying, like, what could go right, and how could textiles really enrich our lives, not just in an ornamental way and an artistic way, which is really important, and I think what comes to people's mind first, but also in a community building way, a land connection way, and just in a personal empowerment way.
I agree very much with what my colleagues have said. My vision would be that we feel okay about feeling okay about what we're wearing, and that we appreciate that it keeps us warm, it keeps us dry, and that we're not saying don't buy clothing. That's not the concept. The concept is have, as I think it was Joanne was saying, and the available to us, what is all the information about where it was made. I have this exercise of, if you don't know where that country is, then why would you buy something from it? If you don't know who the manufacturer is, you don't have to do that anymore. If we understand the value, then we will appreciate that more, understand why we may have to pay a little bit more for that, because we're not just going to wear it 7 times, we're going to wear it 707 times.
I love those answers too. And mine is, I just kind of I'm stuck with the very big picture vision, but I really am interested in making sure the circular economy is democratized, that we are building this regional based infrastructure. And I come from a space, and it's probably similar to downstream textile stuff, but I won't say that it is because I haven't spent time in that. But these are stigmatized. The labor is stigmatized. The stuff is stigmatized. People think secondhand furniture is so gross. I was speaking at a zero waste event in San Francisco in 2018 as part of this upholstery shop I worked for. And I asked the audience of young professionals, because all of a sudden I was thinking, who knows what reupholstery is? Nobody knew what it is. I mean, it really made for an awkward presentation when I realized that, oh my goodness. And I went back to my boss and I was like, we have a problem. We don't have customers, we don't have employees, and we don't have business owners. And this is the future environmental professionals. Like, these are really siloed things. Labor is so siloed from environment, which is so siloed from climate, which is so siloed from equity. Like, I just think it's so my vision stays really firmly fixed on this democratization, again, of investing in the infrastructure that's here and now, and changing our language. Like you guys said, everything you just said is so beautiful. Like, I want to be a part of all that. I've never really been the maker, but like, I don't know, it's inviting to me, even as someone who's not on the maker side of it. And I want to make sure that we're inviting in the labor piece and destigmatizing these things along the way, because I truly believe in like this Green New Deal era. Like, this is an opportunity to open the doors. We've kept them so shut. We've been so narrow for so long with who we've invited in, who we've extended the language to. It's such a great opportunity. So my vision is, I love this. I love the idea of a furniture hub, of creating this like regional market of highest best use, and catalyzing and incubating local businesses and skilled labor, and getting people excited about what these materials can be. Just like you guys said, they have so much meaning, so much attachment, but we need creative brains who weren't taught to start with perfection. We're starting with imperfect, which is exactly what upholsterers have done since the 14th century, right? That's their whole job. Like, let's bring them in. We don't have any apprenticeship programs. We have such a talent pipeline shortage. It's bonkers bonkers, but I think we can do so much like co-benefit solutioning altogether. So I'm optimistic, but very focused on the democratization piece for sure.
Wow, awesome, everybody. Thank you again. I want to open it up for the next couple minutes just to see if our panel, and if our participants have any questions for our panelists. And if you think of any after, I'll put my email in the chat. Go ahead and send them to me. I can ask our panelists. I can forward on along questions. I want to thank everybody again. Again, we have Joanne Grash from CPSC here today. We have Heather Podall from Fibershed, Connie Ulasowitz from CBU Productions, and Jamie Fasciola from Furniturecycle. All right, anybody have any questions? Okay, we do have one in the chat. How do you decipher Prop 65 warnings on everything from food packaging to clothing?
Well, Prop 65 is really hard to decipher because it's a little outdated. My pregnant friend just asked me about this. Why does this shirt have a Prop 65 label on it? And I said it's maybe waterproofed or something. So oftentimes they don't have to disclose what it is in the product that's qualifying it for Prop 65. I will say a lot of the discussion around the Capitol is, how do we update that? There's another more complex program called the Safer Consumer Products Program. They're looking at textiles that are waterproofed, but it's a very, very focused, again, it's PFAS, perfluoroalkyls on textiles, whereas Prop 65 is super broad. So I don't know if that helps. I'm sorry.
All right. Thank you all. I appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and wrap up so that we can get our next session online. Thank you again to our panelists. Oh, Connie?
Yes, Janice had a question.
Yeah, I'm trying to word it, and it's easier to say it. So I'm obviously an instructor like yourself, but one of the things that I've deconstructed a lot of things, and I've worked with students in talking about construction and stitch type specifically. There are so many super fast overlock and flat lock, and it's really time consuming to deconstruct garments if you're trying to either fix it or even remake a whole thing and use the parts. And I'm wondering, one of the things that I am really passionate about is having students not only know where the materials come from, but also think about the construction of the garment and how the stitches are put together so that those could be picked out, and that's so much labor. I've done some pieces and they would be couture pieces and no one can afford them. Because it takes so much time to deconstruct. So the less we deconstruct, obviously, and just keep things intact, it's better. But and use them in whole form. But can we teach young designers that if they choose construction that's so hard to deconstruct or time consuming, so that's kind of my passion is starting early with not only the materials, but how you're putting these things together. And that could relate to garments or furniture or anything else. Because, can we plug in a sleeve to any jacket? Can we choose things that could be built in parts like, Garanimals or something? I don't know.
Right.
But have you done things like that when you talk to your students?
I think yes, but I think some of the deconstruction could happen in a way that's not taking the sleeve out the way it was, but maybe, cutting the sleeve a different way, making a cap sleeve there or something, you could do different, so it's not always on the seam or, but yes, I also think that most people don't understand that that's so easy to do because I can't remember the name of the machine, but the one, you're overlocking at the same time you're straight stitching.
Right,
And
right.
it's a machine that's doing that, or, there's so many machines that do so many wonderful things, but we don't have them around us. So we don't understand that it's just like that to get it done, but
Mhm.
it's not made to come
Right.
apart like that.
Right, those machines use 5 different threads.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
All right, we're about to actually it's going to kick us off. I don't want
Yeah.
that to happen to us in an awkward pause.
Thank you.
But thank you all. And yeah, I'm happy to forward on information and get folks connected if that's what we need to do. So
Thank you
Thank you
so much,
all.
Sai.
Yeah.